Let's be honest here. The best controller Nintendo has ever developed, in my opinion, is probably the Super Nintendo controller, and that is due to the fact that the Super Nintendo controller has become the blueprint for the modern game controller, with nearly every game system since the Super Nintendo using a diamond button layout, shoulder buttons, start and select in the middle, and of course Nintendo themselves have even reused the Super Nintendo's button layout on both the classic controller and on the more modern 3DS and DS handhelds, which have the complete Super Nintendo button set along with some more buttons depending on the system. Even the Wii U gamepad and Wii U Pro controller feature the Super Nintendo's button layout. However, Nintendo has been trying to reinvent the wheel ever since the Nintendo 64 came out with that system's three-handle controller that looks like something an alien would hold. While the GameCube's button layout became well known to Smash players and Mario Kart players, all the buttons besides the A button were a lot smaller compared to the Super Nintendo's diamond layout, and the B button was a little button down there. I mean, even the GameCube prototype looked more ergonomic as all the other buttons were circled around the A button. And the Wii, despite having some conventional controller options, had the main controller be this Wii Remote, which wasn't that good of a controller. I mean, it felt more like something from a Tiger plug-and-play TV game than a Nintendo system. Now, was this a sales disaster? Not really. The Wii was like a pop musician in the sense that when the Wii was big, it was selling tons and tons, and people were buying Wii consoles left and right. But of course, those consoles later ended up in attics across America, as most people only were buying casual games for the Wii, and that's it, due to the controller options and the fact that the Wii was underpowered. Many of the more well-known games last generation that targeted gamers were not on Nintendo consoles, but were instead on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, and the PC. And did I mention that with the Nintendo Wii, it was mostly seen as a casual kids console due to the controller, and even more so than other Nintendo consoles had been? And the Wii U's controller was a gigantic disaster due to the fact that the controller not only cost a ton and was hard to replace, but was a giant touchscreen. It was single touchscreen, mind you, and not a multi-touch screen, surrounded by buttons that you held. And it was big, it was bulky, it drained its battery quickly, it had poor range. It just wasn't a very good controller, and it was probably one of the reasons the Wii U didn't do so well. In fact, Nintendo has already announced the NX earlier than other companies have announced their next generation consoles. However, Nintendo has not given gamers very much information about the Nintendo NX, just saying it's coming and it's going to be a hybrid of handhelds and consoles, and little more than that. However, there have been a lot of rumors floating around about the NX that range from credible to this is something a fanboy who spends more time obsessing about the game industry than playing games would make up and post to 4chan. Now, one credible source of rumors and speculation, however, are patents. Now, patents are what companies put out to keep other companies from stealing their intellectual property, but they also say in them what they have patented and what their plans are. And Nintendo has patented a new controller design. Now, sure, maybe this patent won't get used in the final console, or maybe fan backlash will cause them to change their minds, like what happened with Sony when they did the whole DRM patent, and the negative backlash was so big that before the system was even announced, they said, we're going to not do this, and it was actually a good idea for sales and internet reputation. But what is this new controller design, you may ask? Well, while other companies have gone with more conventional controller layouts mimicking the Super Nintendo's new controller design consists of 2 analog sticks and a display. That's right, 2 analog sticks and a display where the buttons will show up on a display. Now, I know what you're thinking, you're already dreading this, because that is the same thing you'll see on mobile games where all the buttons are on the touchscreen. Now, anybody who has played mobile games knows just how well those things work in the real world, and why a lot of mobile games go for the Candy Crush demographic than hardcore gamers, because to play anything hardcore or close to that on a tablet or phone, you need a physical controller with physical buttons, and touchscreens just don't cut it. And this is what Nintendo is doing. They are trying to reinvent the wheel yet again when it comes to game controllers. Now, maybe this controller will somehow just work. Maybe somebody who has every Nintendo product, has a whole wall of products with the Nintendo logo on it, along with a few retro 90s Nintendo posters, will play it and say it's the best thing for gaming since the Wii U gamepad. But many other people might just ignore it, and it might just become irrelevant. I mean, all I can think of when I see this new controller is all those other tech products that have tried to reinvent the wheel and fail. From the Steam controller, to the Turbo Touch 360, to that one Acer laptop that had 2 different screens on it, with one of the screens replacing the keyboard. Yes, that was actually a thing from Acer. And of course, let's not forget all the other companies that have tried to reinvent the wheel. Like, for example, Microsoft. Remember Metro with Windows 8? They had to scale it back to how it is in Windows 10 now, where Metro apps can run in Windows and where the start button features Metro instead of having no start button or a start button that just brought up Metro for the whole screen. And let's not forget the Sonic the Hedgehog series. That series was reinventing the wheel each and every game, and now look at it. Sonic doesn't even have an HD remaster on next gen because it has no games on next gen unless you count the Wii U, in which case it's had just a mediocre game and a flat out garbage game. And what Nintendo needs to do to move on is realize the casual market has left them. They are all playing Angry Birds and Candy Crush on their tablets and their phones, which cost a lot less than a 3DS or Wii U, might I add. I mean, you can get a tablet that has Microsoft Windows on it and an x86 processor for less than a 3DS or Wii U. Same goes with phones. And I bet if Microsoft or Sony released a game controller with just touch buttons and similar technology, people would panic. People would say it's the end of gaming and that gaming's doomed again. That's what people would say if it wasn't Nintendo doing this. And maybe they'll even say it if Nintendo's doing it, because this is honestly one of the worst ideas I've seen for a controller in a long time. I mean, you can't get much worse than a controller that has phone buttons. And when you see a controller and think of touch buttons, people are going to think of phone games. It's kind of like trying to sell a car with an aluminum body to people who think of beer cans. And here's the thing, Nintendo is going to really have to convince people that they want this controller if this controller is to succeed, because if it fails or the controller's not pick up and play friendly enough, it's not going to do very well in the marketplace, and the new Nintendo NX will sit there right beside the Wii U in the pile of forgotten consoles. And if you want the perfect controller to prove my theory that Nintendo needs to stop trying to reinvent the wheel, just look at Valve's Steam controller and how it's gotten a very mixed reception from game review sites and some gamers. Because here's the thing, trying to reinvent the wheel for something that worked for so long just doesn't work. And that's all that really needs to be said about this new controller. Thanks for watching and subscribe for more.